Hare Krishna. Question: can the intelligence control the ego? Especially because the ego is said to be higher than the intelligence. Answer: yes, the intelligence can be used to recognize when we are giving into the ego and acting egoistically, and we can thereafter use it to abandon or check such kind of actions. So the intelligence in the inner hierarchy, in the subtle body, there is the mind, the intelligence, and the ego, and these are considered to be hierarchical. So in that sense, we could say that the ego is higher than the intelligence. So can the intelligence control the ego? Yes, if we see, Krishna doesn't make an explicit statement that the ego is higher. He talks about these 8 elements in 7.4. Bhumirapo nalo vayu khammano buddhirevicha ahankara iti yamme vinna prakritashruta. So here just gives a list of 8 elements. And when he talks about a hierarchy in 3.42, he says that evam buddhe indriyani paranyahur indriyebhya param manah manasastu para buddhe yo buddhe paratastu saha. So here he says higher than the body is the sense, are the senses, above the senses is the mind, above the mind is the intelligence, and above the intelligence is the soul. So here he doesn't talk about the ego. Now we have to understand that the ego is the sense of misidentification that we have, because of which we identify with that which we are not. Ahankara, as we say. The akartahamiti manyate. Because of ego, one thinks of oneself as the doer, when actually the modes are the doer of things. Krishna talks about this in 3.27 in the Bhagavad Gita. Now, when we talk about that there is the ego, there is the egoistic conception, and there is the ego as a thing, as an object. So of course it's a subtle thing, so we can't really say it's an object in the gross sense of the word object. So the object ego, just as even if we become pure devotees, the earth, water, fire, air are going to be there in our body. It's not that because a person devotee becomes pure, so water or fire or ether are going to go away from the body. Similarly, even when a devotee becomes pure, it is not that the ego is going to go away. So just as the gross elements are going to be there in the body, similarly subtle elements and the ego is also going to be the ego there in the body. So ego is not the problem. The false ego is the problem. So the false ego means this misidentification, that misidentifying ourselves with that which we are not. That sort of false ego is something which we will always have an ego. That means the sense of I-ness will be there, that I am, but what I am will change. If I think I am an Indian, if I think I am a male, if I think I am an intellectual, if I think I am so and so, all these bodily designations which we have, those we will recognize to be peripheral, and our essential identity will understand I am a soul who is a part of Krishna. So now there are various levels of misidentification that we may have, and these different levels of misidentification can be dealt with at different levels. So for example, if somebody, as it is said, the pride comes before a fall, in the biblical tradition it is said. This is somebody who acts very egoistically. That person is likely to have the ego smashed. And in this smashing of the ego, this can happen even in a secular life. That means there may not be any spiritual or devotional component to it. And the person may learn a hard lesson. Somebody brags a lot and then is not able to live up to the bragging, and then cuts a sorry figure. So at that time one understands that I should not brag. So this is a lesson which one can learn without necessarily having spiritual realization. So the intelligence in a functional sense can help us learn from experience that arrogance leads to indigence, arrogance leads to frustration, arrogance leads to misery, arrogance leads to humiliation. So therefore, I should not be arrogant. Now, when we say that the ego is higher than the intelligence, that refers to the fundamental level of misidentification. That is, to the forgetfulness of our spiritual identity, and the forgetfulness of our relationship with Krishna. So this, with intelligence, we can remember this, and we definitely should try to remember this with our intelligence. But intelligence alone cannot give us a realization of our spiritual identity. With our intelligence, we follow the process of bhakti, and by following the process of bhakti, we will realize our true identity. So, so in that sense, the intelligence alone cannot help us to completely conquer the ego or remove the ego in the sense of the false ego. We cannot remove the ego itself entirely. The ego will always be there. What we need to remove is the false ego. False ego is misidentification with that which we are not. And there can be various degrees of misidentifications. So, there are many misidentifications which we can remove using our intelligence. So, for example, if I think that I am a very clever, I am a very clever person, then if I see that, oh, there are others who are cleverer than me, there are times when, despite my cleverness, I keep forgetting things. I make mistakes. So then I can see it's not this cleverness is not my own. It is a gift of God, and He has given me. He can take it away from me. Therefore, I should be humble. So, by this sort of analysis and contemplation, we can avoid different levels of misidentification. And of course, if we are guided by scripture, which also makes us increasingly, at least intellectually aware, intellectually cognizant of our real identity, then we can keep resisting false misidentifications. And as we practice the process of bhakti, in which we are using our intelligence to act according to our true identity, which is to serve Krishna, to act as in the mood of service to Krishna, then by that we can move onward steadily and come to the spiritual level where we go beyond the false ego. So, with various levels of misidentification caused by the false ego can be removed by the intelligence, and the process for practicing, for realizing our true identity, that is going beyond our false ego, that can also be sustained, that can be started and sustained by using our intelligence. But the realization of our true identity and the concomitant rejection of the false ego at a foundational level will happen not with the intelligence, but it will happen through the process of bhakti, which will give us spiritual realization. Thank you. Hare Krishna.